out of all the craziness here out of this past week, the multiplayer reveal, the beta coverage, the Black Ops Cold War and Warzone mid-season update, we didn't really get the chance to talk about the new experience coming to Warzone, the new map and everything like that coming later this year, and subsequently, the big problems this then presents here for the future of Warzone. Today we're going to break down the things that we learned about that are coming, but also talk about some of these big problems that it does pose and how these may be remedied. So as we go along, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you agree that some of these things we're talking about are pretty big problems, and how would you remedy it if you were in charge? As well, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below. Let's aim for 1,000 likes on this, and of course, if you are new to the channel, with nearly 60% of viewers not subscribed, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all things Vanguard, all things Warzone, and anything COD related. Finally, my friends over at G Fuel ended up bumping up code Espresso to 30% off as well in celebration of the Vanguard beta, so check that out if you're interested. Get a restock, pick something up for the very first time. Code Espresso gets you 30% off. And actually, finally, even though we're at the tail end of weekend 1 here of the beta, I'll have a few beta codes that'll pop up here, so if you need a code for either today or going into weekend 2 here, you can redeem those if you're one of the first ones to find them. That said, let's jump right in the video. So to start, let's talk about the map information here. In the Vanguard multiplayer reveal, towards the tail end of the presentation from Sledgehammer, Beanox, and then Raven, we ended up getting some information about the coming Warzone experience. Something that looks to be much larger of an update and more so likely an overhaul here for the Warzone experience that we know. But they started out by talking about the map information a little bit. We're going to the Pacific, getting a brand new world here, and what they showed was a little bit of pre-alpha footage here, flying through the map in some various locations. Obviously, this likely isn't going to be any indication of the full map. It's probably just a sort of needle in a haystack of the environments and locations we'll end up seeing here with this, because of these handful of different screenshots and fly-throughs. If it's anything comparable to the sizing of the current Verdansk, well, that's not a lot of locations to see. But Amos Hodge, creative director at Raven, ended up talking a little bit about this, saying that it's coming this year, shortly after the launch of Vanguard. So that's a big thing to take into consideration when we talk about when this sort of stuff will be happening. Not just the map, but the entirety of this new Warzone experience and the rest of what we'll talk about here in this video. Not at the launch of Vanguard, but likely shortly thereafter. Right now, it's currently rumored that that's going to be at Season 1, kind of how we saw that integration with Black Ops Cold War into Warzone last year at Season 1. And right now, that rumored time frame is the 23rd of November, which is 2.5 weeks after the launch of Vanguard. But Amos Hodge described the world a little bit as having lush landscapes, extremely cool locations, and is going to be a fresh new experience for players, with an atmosphere that's vibrant, alive, and open to narrative events. Now, he also mentioned this is going to share the same tech and engine as Vanguard, which is going to be key to some of these problems we discuss here later on in the video. He also mentioned there's going to be free calendars of content continuing on here with new modes, playlists, LTMs, seasonal events, things like your numbers event here coming up, and community celebrations, which we don't have any comparison to just yet, it seems like. But truthfully, seeing that, I'm entirely interested with what's on deck here, especially a brand new map, an entire new locale, something that we can all kind of enter in fresh with. If you played Verdansk and you played Modern Warfare and Warzone, you kind of knew going into 1984 that it was going to be very similar to what you had beforehand. If you knew all the nooks and crannies, you knew most of the nooks and crannies here with the new map. The only locations that would really change were your places like Summit, Factory, and other locations that were slightly changed or new in some capacity with Verdansk 84. So I love the idea of seeing something brand new here at this, and I'm ready for that change. But what I also love is that what we saw within that teaser, the vibrance and the lighting of it reminds me heavily of the current Rebirth Island lighting, and that's what I think is perfect. I'd love to see that in the current day Verdansk here in 84, but we don't have that. I honestly hated that we kind of took the original Rebirth color palette and essentially threw it onto Verdansk 84, that sort of greenish orange haze. But also, I mean, to be fair, the original Verdansk also still had a somewhat drabber feel to that color palette as well, but looking forward to something a bit more eye-catching and eye-appealing. But Amos Hodge also talked about a little bit more than just the new map here in that experience. He ended up mentioning the brand new anti-cheat, something that is sort of the face of this new Warzone experience that we're coming to see with this, in which he called it a multifaceted anti-cheat system, which does fall in line here with what we've seen discussed a little bit earlier when it was first announced. It's seemingly something that's going to be in conjunction with Vanguard, an anti-cheat system there as well. Whether or not that's retroactive and it covers course, the base game experiences of, say, Black Ops Cold War and Modern Warfare as well? We don't quite know, but at least for Warzone as well as Vanguard, we'll see that anti-cheat day one of the new Warzone experience. So that's at integration, not at the launch of Vanguard. Just bear that in mind. Hopefully, though, this is something that actually does combat things at a much deeper level, stops it maybe at a kernel level perhaps, though again, as we've talked about, that's probably going to introduce a whole nother slew of discussion of privacy and things like that. But if you end up taking a look at, say, ironically, Vanguard, which is Valorant's anti-cheat, there's not many problems here with that I've seen from an outsider looking in. I got a buddy who's a pro in Valorant, but I don't hear too much about any cheaters, especially on the nearly daily basis we hear about it within Warzone. I'm just hoping that with how much they're pushing this here, how much it seems to be an in-house development, that it turns out to be something that truly just negates all the problems we have currently with Warzone, and that kind of makes Warzone incredibly fun to play again. I don't know if we'll see that happen at all, but I'm incredibly excited for the prospect of not running into cheaters every second or third game or whatever it may be currently. But this is now where I want to kind of pivot to the problematic side of things, where this is awesome at its core, but it has a lot of issues that it needs to confront and may get a little bit messy along the way. So there's a lot, honestly, but let's start fundamentally. We know that Vanguard is meant to be built for the easiest integration possible, to see things go one-to-one with Warzone almost right off the rip. But here's where that first fundamental hurdle comes into play. Remember when we mentioned that Amos Hodge said that this was going to share the same tech and engine as Vanguard? Well, at first glance, that's pretty standard, but Vanguard is a modified version of Modern Warfare 19's engine, meaning that this is an upgrade, if you will, of the current Warzone technology, adding things into the base game here within Vanguard that we can't do within Modern Warfare and Warzone right now. This is common, though. Every single game is built upon past engines in the franchise, adding to, innovating with the core builds of the games in the past. But where this is a problem or point of contention with Warzone is that Cold War didn't introduce a need for this sort of upgrade. Cold War's tech was never integrated into Warzone. Only those weapons were. We never saw any mechanics or anything like that come over. No engine shift for Warzone, just the weapons which were rebuilt within the Modern Warfare and Warzone engine. And that was despite plenty of rumors with that Outbreak world that was the air quote new Warzone map, but that was actually just the Blackout 2.0 map. In fact, Cold War and Modern Warfare and Warzone today are still about the furthest from the same games you could possibly be. Cold War retaining that more arcade shooter feel and build, while Modern Warfare and Warzone strive to have a more realistic, grounded approach to the game build and mechanics. They're both fundamentally fine in their own ways, but they're two very different games. So when we come down to Warzone then sharing the same tech and engine as Vanguard, that's going to need to include some new things and upgraded tech, likely leaving question marks for things like the 10 attachment system, the FOV slider on next-gen consoles, destruction of some kind, given that tactical destruction is such a main focal point of the marketing for multiplayer, things like maybe even dynamic weather being introduced here. So either we're going to be getting a brand new engine upgrade and massive overhaul to Warzone and the current build here, or we're going to miss out on a lot of the intended design points. But where that then gets tricky, I don't know if we've ever seen a full-on engine upgrade happen mid-year with a Call of Duty game. The only overhaul of a game that I can think of in the past was Call of Duty World War II, with the Division Overhaul system. But that still was above the base level of the game. That was still things that wouldn't too greatly affect the house of cards that was the development of the game overall, like the amount of weapon attachments you could have, or the ability to change your field of view, or to be able to destroy environments. But we'll come back to that in a second. Another problem here is the problem of weaponry. Some of Warzone's brilliance is that you have the ability to use every weapon you've ever owned in one place. But currently there's fundamentals to the entire build system that Vanguard has in its design approach that right now wouldn't work. And sure, you could dumb it down from 10 attachments to 5, like we saw that the wild card of Gunfighter and Black Ops Cold War dumbed down the option of having 8 attachments to 5 within Warzone, but that was an optional way to add to your weapon. You still had 5 weapon attachments at its base, whereas Vanguard has 10. So to cut that in half to fit the Warzone narrative is weird. But not to mention, thematically, it deviates so much more from the sort of realism of it all whenever you have modern weapons from 2020 all the way back into World War II in the 40s. An 80-year difference of weaponry would surely set off some people. I know that I wouldn't care, but again, that realism approach here entirely broken at that point. It's one thing to have modern weapons in Cold War, the 80s time frame, but another to go another 40 years in the past. Though legally, that's where it gets kind of murky because you have a metric ton of weapons that people likely paid for with blueprints, so would that then be lost? I will say that as much as that is a terrible situation to look at and think about, all the way back to the integration though, there were some disclaimers stating that there may be occasions where content is delayed or becomes temporarily or permanently inaccessible. So how do you remedy all of that? Personally, with all of those issues, even focusing down just to the core tech, I have to wonder if this is the time in Warzone's life cycle where we see a dedicated transition to a Warzone exe file, an application for Warzone that is only for Warzone and independent of Modern Warfare's base game, something that can be accommodating for an entirely new base build of the game and deliver a true next-gen application and experience for console instead of what right now we have is the PS4 and Xbox One versions being played on the PS5 and Series X, something that allows you to differentiate if you're on PlayStation 4, the ability to just get a PlayStation 4 version, but if you're on PlayStation 5, you can get a PlayStation 5 version that has all those upgraded tech and abilities. Though even that, I think, presents even more problems, because does this mean then that Modern Warfare and Warzone are then its own game where it can still play Verdansk, can use Modern Warfare and Cold War weaponry, while Warzone 2.0 is kind of a reboot, a building block for World War II era games this year, and then maybe Modern Warfare weaponry next year with another new map, so that you're not necessarily taking weapons 80 years in the past? I truly don't envy anyone that has to try and plan this out, and perhaps maybe the answer is way simpler than we're making it out to be, but it seems like there's just a lot of pesky issues that pop up as you start to follow each thread of the web. So time will tell here with this, but while we have a lot of cool stuff, it seems like on the horizon for Warzone, there's a lot of unanswered questions that may make this a little bit more complicated than it initially seems. So that's where we're gonna wrap it up. I would love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of this here? Are you guys thinking it might be time for Warzone to get its own application file, its own exe? Do you think that we're gonna see things just tossed into Warzone that we know right now with some upgrades to the engine? Whatever the case may be, feel free to let me know your thoughts down below. But hopefully enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Warzone, Vanguard, and anything COD related. We got you covered with all of it. If you also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to chat with me outside of YouTube. So if you guys want to start a conversation, ask me a question, whatever the case may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.